Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's PEO 2023 Council Election All-Candidate Meeting. My name is Arthur Sinclair, and I will be the moderator for tonight's discussion. Tonight, we will hear from candidates for Northern Region Councillor. The candidates for this position are Ahmed Elsher and Luc Roberge. The electronic meetings will be with the candidates via webcast enable voters to learn more about the candidates and PO issues, so more of them will vote. Voters were able to pose questions online in advance of the discussion. We'll try to get to as many of those questions as possible. In accordance with the approved protocol for the all candidates meeting, as moderator, I may shorten the questions and not read out preambles to questions, may select any question, not necessarily the highest ranked, may remove offensive and duplicate questions, and may add questions not on the platform. Each candidate will be provided 2 minutes for opening remarks. I will then direct a question to a candidate. That candidate will have 1 minute to respond to the question. After the candidate has responded, the remaining candidate will each have 1 minute to address the first candidate's response to the question. Following the question period, the candidates will have 90 seconds each for closing remarks. The order of speakers was determined by a draw earlier this evening. The views and opinions expressed on this broadcast do not necessarily reflect the views of PEO and are the responsibility of the candidates. So without further delay, let's get started with the opening remarks of Ahmed Elsher.
Okay, hello everyone. First of all, I would like to thank all of you for your time and participation in the election, and special thanks to you, Arthur, and the PEO personnel that are behind the scene for their efforts in running this election process. As for me, my name is Ahmed Elsher. I am an assistant professor at Lakehead University. I have been in the engineering profession for over a dozen years here in Canada and overseas, and I have been actively participating with the Lakehead chapter for around 4 years. The reason I felt motivated to run for the Northern Region Council position is that I felt responsibility towards the region that I work and reside at, which I believe is currently facing a number of challenges to the profession, from processing time of the licenses to overseas design, emerging disciplines, and the continuing limitation to chapters activities, especially in the North, where I can obviously see their urgent importance. In addition to my professional practice, I feel humbled and honored to be regularly communicating with future engineers on a daily basis as a professor. In addition to all my colleagues in the department and faculty, they are all professional engineers. I found in myself the motive and the ability to do a change, and I wish that I would be worthy of my fellow engineers' trust, as well as my obligation and responsibility towards the public. Finally, I look forward to your questions, and thank you so much.
The second candidate for Northern Region Councillor is Luc Roberge.
Thank you, Arthur. Greeting. My name is Luc Roberge, and I'm the current regional councillor, and I've put my name forward seeking a third term to the position of Northern Regional Councillor. Who I am? I'm a retired engineer now for slightly over a year. I work in various industries, lumber, energy, and consulting. And over that time period, I spent over 19 years participating in the chapter movement in the Algoma, North Bay, and Kapuskasing. During those periods, I've served as chapter chairs for 3 years. I've also during my time on council, I've been the council for 3 years now. I've been a member of the regional council committee, the licensing committee, the volunteer leadership committee, the HR, the finance, governance, and the joint relations committee. And I'm also a recipient of the Order of Honor in 2019. The reason I'm running is to continue the work that has been started under the governance review. There's a few gaps that needs to be continue to be addressed. One of them is licensing under FORPACTA. A big rock for me is the value of chapters and the volunteer, what they bring to the association. And that's why I volunteered to head that subcommittee last year. And also, I was a member of the task force that was structured to hire our new CEO registrar to replace Johnny Zucon, who is retiring. So, to repeat, I'm seeking re-election to continue this work, and I wish all the luck to all the candidates. Thank you.
All right. So that concludes the opening remarks. Now let's go to the first question of the evening. Based on your knowledge of the Professional Engineers Act and the regulations, how would you describe PEO's core mandate? And that first question goes to Ahmed.
Okay, thank you so much for the question. I think this is a vital question. So when it comes to the core mandate, I believe that the core mandate of the PEO, it is related to ensuring and regulating the knowledge and the skills among their members, like the professional engineering holders, and also applying the standards and ethics. So I feel that it is a great privilege as well as an opportunity for us as self-regulated profession. So in addition also to ensuring the safety and of the public. So it is an opportunity for us to ensure our professional act so that the stakeholders as well as the public are practicing safely while ensuring following the proper regulations and bylaws set by the PEO. Thank you.
Thank you. Now over to Luke. PEO's core mandate.
The core mandate is very well defined in the Professional Engineering Act and the regulation. And it's basically to regulate the engineering profession in order to protect the public interest. And this is basically achieved in three manners. The first one is by issuing licenses. The second one is through enforcement and handling of discipline issues if required. And the last one is by publishing professional practice standard. And all these steps are clearly defined under the Professional Engineering Act. Thank you.
Thank you. And as the evening goes on, we'll be going back and forth. So the different candidate has the first answer and response. And so the next question, what do you see as your role as councillor, that is, as a member of the board of directors, in the fulfillment of PEO's core mandate? That question over to Luke.
My role as a councillor is to help PEO transition to being a modern regulator while fulfilling the requirement as defined under the Professional Engineering Act. And this is achieved by participating in establishing direction for PEO, assist in the creation of support and execution of the strategic plan, ensure that the board actions are aligned with the overall achieving goal of protecting the public, and the support of the establishment of policies-based governance. And all of that while performing on a regular basis some self-reviews to ensure that we are achieving the mandate that has been set up for the organization. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to Ahmed.
Okay, so as a councillor, I see it is a great honor, privilege, and responsibility. So given the opportunity, I think the first thing that I will be seeking to acquire is earning the licensees' trust, so that they can feel confident that they are actually reflecting their core opinions about the act of the PEO, so that the stakeholders, which are the license holders, feel comfortable about their regulator, which is the PEO, in ensuring that whatever regulations and rules that are set by the PEO are in accordance with their expectations first, and also for their convenience, so that all the the practices in terms of starting even from applying to licenses, CPD, and all other related matters are as convenient as possible and to match with what they are expecting from the regulator.
Now, what do you see as a two-part question? What do you see as the most important challenge facing PEO today? And what should council do to address this challenge? And that question goes to Ahmed now.
Okay, so this, I believe, it is one of the most vital challenges or aspects, and I think one of the things that I would like to touch on, I will not go to details, to which is chapters activities. So I think in the northern regions, which is the role that we're running for, we need more kind of flexibility in terms of the chapters conduct. They need to be provided more freedom and more allowance to practice their activities. And the second thing, which is also very vital, it is related to the risk of losing our self-governance, or at least being irrelevant. So as I mentioned earlier, like being a self-regulated profession, it is a privilege and also a responsibility. So we need to ensure that we are worthy of having this kind of privilege.
Thank you. Same question over to Luke. Biggest threat to the most important challenge to the PO today, and what should we do as council to address that?
Our biggest challenge that council is facing right now is the FARPACTA, the new licensing requirement that was imposed by the government, and that a license needs to be issued to an applicant within 6 months and an answer provided within 10 days if the applicant cannot go through. That is the single biggest action that we're facing, because if we cannot comply with that, the government will interfere. A subset to that is a second threat that I see, is the increased involvement by the province. We need to stay the course under the governance review to avoid being caught, and also by being more proactive, by maintaining a scan at what's happening in Ontario and other provincial regulators, so we can stay at the forefront. But the biggest challenge we're facing right now is FARPACTA in being able to deliver on this new program. Thank you.
So I'm going to go to one of the questions from the audience now, and it was this first question will go to Luke and then Ahmed. There are many Indigenous communities facing several infrastructure failures, such as lack of access to clean drinking water, inadequate housing, energy, and food insecurity. What will you do to work towards truth and reconciliation and welcoming and licensing more Indigenous engineers?
We need to establish licensing is defined in the Act. So from a licensing point of view, our hands are a bit tied because it's a regulated component. So we cannot change that. But the part that we can adapt on is fostering and nurturing relationship with our First Nation to ensure that we can assist them in understanding what needs to happen in obtaining a license, and create a culture within the engineering community to ensure that engineering firm from representing First Nation are giving a fair chance to compete and participate in their own project, and also they have the necessary employment opportunity to develop the skill set to be able to address these challenges up front. Thank you.
Thank you. And over to Ahmed. So what would you do to welcome and license more Indigenous engineers?
Actually, I'm very pleased to hear about to hear this question from the audience. Actually, I would really respect whoever asked this question. EDI is something that is really very important to me, and specifically the Indigenous community. In fact, two of my graduate students are Indigenous students, as well as my major current project is related to Indigenous. But I know that this is not very relevant. But what I feel as a professional professional practitioner is that I believe in creating the opportunity, not only giving the opportunities. So having said that, I believe we need to set up a kind of a special track for this kind of indigenous engineering practice that can actually understand more their needs and also their conducts. And giving this opportunity, I believe we will open the door more to accommodating and welcoming more indigenous engineers.
Excuse me. Thank you. So, a question here about governance. What special skills, experiences, or ideas do you bring to enhance the governance of PEO? What boards have you served on that might be similar to PEO's council? Over to Ahmed.
Okay, so for me, working in the academia as well as previously working in the professional practice, I'm on a daily basis sitting on decision-making tables, like being the coordinator of a graduate program. I'm also a member of the Canadian Society of Civil Engineering. I'm the secretary of the structural division of the Canadian Society of Civil Engineering. I'm chairing also the annual or co-chairing the annual conference of Canadian Society of Civil Engineering. I'm also at the Senate nomination committee, and I previously served in the Senate research committee. So I'm familiar with this kind of self-governance, and I believe this is kind of a key point in any volunteer entities and activities. It gives the members an opportunity to actually having the freedom of delivering the opinions without being like having other concerns and considerations.
And same question over to Luke.
Thank you, Arthur. Having worked for 35 years in industry and 3 types of industry has exposed me to different work system. I retired as senior manager, and throughout my career, I had to learn and how to apply skills like soft skills like facilitating, being a facilitator, communication, conflict resolution, and how to empower people to achieve results. And this is a key aspect, on working on a board, because you just don't go on a board and seek a solution. You need to come in as a team. And also working on a board, you also have to deal with change management. As far as experience as a board, I've been on various boards at PO for the last 3 years. I've been chair of the HR committee. And also I've been chair of a labor management relation, which was an offshoot of a non-union work environment, which giving me a lot of lesson learned on how to apply best practice in dealing with people and issues and how to get a win-win scenario. Thank you.
Thank you. So, back to talking about yourself. Just could you describe any involvement you've had as a volunteer with PEO? What do you think is an appropriate role for a volunteer at a regulatory body, and what should volunteers not do?
So, let's start with what's the role of volunteer. A volunteer is to help the association function, what PO operate. So the pluses of volunteer is to participate on committees, bring ideas, whether it is discipline, licensing, whatever, to put their name up for election, to contribute at a different level. The not to do is to represent PO, like to speak on behalf, to create potential conflicts of interest by talking in a way that would represent or commit to PO, behaving in a non-ethical way. That's bring the association into disrepute. And I missed the first part of the question, Arthur. So there's 3 parts. The do, the don't.
What should volunteers not do?
Okay. I think I touched that. Thank you.
And Ahmed, just to describe any involvement you've had as a volunteer with PEO, What do you think is the appropriate role for a volunteer at a regulatory body, and what should volunteers not do?
Okay, this is a lengthy question, so I will try to rush through it. So, as a volunteer, or like as a background for my volunteer activity, I enjoyed volunteering activities that serve the public in my community for many non-for-profit organizations, either they are local communities or academic communities, as well as engineering communities. I have been an active member in the Lakehead chapter for the 4 years. I was also the Lakehead chapter's diligent in attending the chapter's leaders conference in 2022. I participated in conference organization committee for arranging the Lakehead chapter's AGM and the technology conference for 3 years. I also represented the PEO Lakehead chapter as a panelist member at the Diversity in Engineering panel back in this year. I'm also, and again, back to the question, what is the role? I think I'm running out of time, so I think I will pass on that.
That's quite right. What do you see as the ideal relationship between PEO and the Ontario Society for Professional Engineers and any similar advocacy-focused stakeholder organizations? And that's back to you, Ahmed.
Okay, can you repeat the question one more
Sure.
time? Sorry.
Of course, yeah. And start his time later. Can you describe the ideal relationship between PEO and the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers, or OSPE, and any similar advocacy-focused stakeholder organizations?
Yeah, thank you so much for repeating the question. So, in terms of the relation between OSPE and the PEO, I believe they both need to operate at an arm length. However, they can be considered as or they can communicate a lot in terms of collaboration in just serving the public. Like for OSPE, for example, they advocate a lot for the public, but we can always involve in their activities and in their conducts by holding some representation from the PEO with OSPE, by having a representation from the PEO in their activities. But in my opinion, I think they may need to operate at an arm length, so the decision made by either parties are not influenced by each other. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And the same question over to Luke.
So
The relationship between PEO and advocacy-focused stakeholder organizations.
the relationship should be one of mutual respect, and exchanges of information should be happening through regular structured exchange, so that PEO, as far as the advocacy group concerned, knows what the concerns are, what's happening, so that each party can develop an understanding of what is happening, and also to maintain that forward look, that lens of what could be happening and what could be made to strengthen the relationship. But at the end of the day, one must remember that PEO's core function is, as a regulator, is to protect the public, but the advocacy group, like the word said, whether it's optional or not, is to advocacy for membership and not to act as a regulator for licenses. So there's a fine line that needs to be maintained between the two parties. Thank you.
Thank you. And talking more about the PEO, what weaknesses, like this is a bit of a SWOT analysis, what weaknesses, if any, should PEO seek to improve in its role as a regulator or in its governance model? And that's over to Luke.
A weakness is that PEO has been slow to react to certain condition, which has led to PEO being placed in an undesirable position. And the biggest example of that is FARPACTA, this licensing requirement that's being imposed in front of us. We've known from a long time from the Ontario Fairness Commission that there was a gap that needed to be addressed, but somehow we have been unable to address on a on a forthcoming basis, proactive basis, in order to put a proper program in place instead of being pushed down our throat. PO is doing a lot of improvement on his IT structure in order to promote more hybrid work processes, more digitization, digital work, electronic work to take place. But again, we've been slow to adapt, which has caused work inefficiencies and timeline. So being more proactive in its work method and the work system would have helped a lot PO avoiding what happened under the COVID crunch.
And Ahmed, over to you. What weaknesses, if any, should PEO seek to improve in its role as a regulator or in its governance model?
I think I have to agree with Luke on that. So I have actually myself went through this process of licensing not very recent, around like 4 or 5 years ago. That the duration for applying for the license it need to be shortened. And this is by adapting some kind of online or computer-based model so that it can accelerate the processing time. And if I would mention a second weakness or a second item that need to be enhanced, it will be related to reflecting the stakeholders and the license holders' opinions. It is unfortunate that I can see the participation of the members in the election, for example, is typically around 10%. So if there is one thing that I would like to see in this election, it will be like seeing more participation from the members so that they know that their voice is actually heard.
Thank you. So we are, I have to start monitoring the time a little bit closer. So there's one question I want to make sure to give both of you the opportunity for, and which is really simple about yourself. What is the one thing you want voters to know about you? And that's over to Ahmed.
Okay, so if there is one thing that I would like to the voters to know about me, that I am a person that is not very set on their opinions. So I will be glad to rectify myself, revising my understanding, my opinions, and if proven or if someone presented me with a valid argument, I have no problem with revising myself. So I'm creating my opinion based on the discussions, the continuous discussion, the opinions, the feedback that I get from my respected peers and fellow professional engineers. So I think this is something that is vital for anyone who is running for the councillor, so that the voters know that their opinions will actually be reflected in real world, rather than just coming with a preset opinion or plans.
Thank you. And over to Luke. What is the one thing you want voters to know about you?
The one thing is that I'm willing to invest the time. Being a councillor requires a fair amount of time, and I want you to know that like I have demonstrated in the past, I will continue to do so, but I'm willing to invest the time required to fulfill my role as a councillor. And if that involves traveling to different region, like I've done during my terms, I'm willing to do that again, to continue seeking consultation so I have informed based decision that I can make. So consultation is a very key part, but most of all is that the role of a councillor takes a lot of time, and I'm willing to invest and continue to invest the effort that I've demonstrated so far. Because I've been on 7 or 8 committees during my 10 years so far as a councillor, and I've always been at the table and always been prepared to deliver. Thank you.
Thank you. And with the time remaining, I do want to make sure we get to some more online. There's one here I wanted to ask it. Please, can you explain the role of PEO Council and the role of a regional councillor related to the Professional Engineering Act and protection of the public? That's a question goes over to you, Luke.
The role of a counselor is to enable the operation of PEO at a high level by providing directive and direction to the association. So this is what needs to be done, okay, and when to be done. Not the how is going to be done and resources and stuff like that. That's not the role of council, that of the board. That's staff. The other part of the question about the regional counselor is that when the chapters were created in 1960s, they were somewhat delegated to regional counselors, and through that, the regional counselors were to provide a more face-to-face approach with having somebody where the license holders in the Ference region would have a go-to person to get information, okay, to give information, receive information, and help with the management of the chapter system. Thank you.
Thank you. And same question over to you, Ahmed. Role of the regional counselor.
Okay, so the role of the counselor in general, I will borrow some of my reply to the previous question. It is related to reflecting the opinions and concerns of the fellow professional engineers. So I think this is an important mandate so that those opinions, concerns, remarks are reflected to the council. And when it comes to the regional counselor, I believe this is also an essential thing, that there is a representation from each region, and I can feel it especially in the northern region where the chapters are a little bit or relatively far from the headquarters of the PEO. So not all professional engineers are experiencing the same concerns and matters. So with that, northern counselor is actually an opportunity to deliver those aspects.
Thank you. Now, I wanted to, because it has been mentioned before, and I think I've got one question here that outlines it, and I wanted to ask that, and this will be our last question before we go into closing remarks. From a public protection standpoint, what, if any, value do you see in PEO's efforts to streamline the licensure of engineering graduate, Canadian or internationally trained? What, if any, opportunities are created by recent government changes? Example, amendments to the Fair Access to Regulated Professions and Compulsory Trades Act. And that acronym's been used a number of times tonight, for FACTA. That's the Fair Access to Regulated Professions and Compulsory Trades Act. And so that question goes over to you, Ahmed.
Okay, so all those acts are mainly have been set to primarily protecting the public safety, and as I mentioned earlier, when it comes to engineering as a self-regulating entity, it is an honor, privilege, and responsibility. So we have to abide by those regulatory acts. Because they are here to protect the public. I know that sometimes it is a little bit of a challenge to implement, but as a practitioner as well as a potential counselor, I believe that this is always a dimension that is reminding us with the responsibility that we have. So, and this kind of dimension will always motivate us to overcome the challenges in implementing those kind of acts and conduct.
Thank you. And Luke?
So, just to be clear, it's the application of what... Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. It's I'll try to summarize. From a public protection standpoint, what, if any, value do you see in PEO's efforts to streamline the licensure of engineering graduates? What, if any, opportunities are created by recent government changes? Example, amendments to FACTA, Fair Access to Regulated Professions and Compulsory Trades Act.
For FACTA, the licensing will help all the new graduate engineer become licensed. It'll be making more enticing for them because the the path going forward will be streamlined, clearer, simpler, and in doing so, people that want to investigate what it needs to become an engineer will have clearer, better access to information. Also, this will help the public understand what licensure is all about because now we have a more streamlined process. And it also will help us have better tools to address, and Ahmed made a point of that, of all the emerging discipline and how that should be addressed. But most of all, which has really nothing to do with PO itself, but as a whole, as a society, we're here to protect the public by providing, qualified licensed engineer. But if we can't provide licensed engineer, that should create more employment opportunities and continue to demonstrate the high value of the work being performed.
Thank you very much. So this does conclude the questions portion of the meeting. Now each candidate will have 90 seconds for closing remarks. In the same order as we started. Closing remarks, over to you, Ahmed.
All right. So first of all, thank you everyone for your time and concern about this election, and many thanks to you, Luke, for being a very respected competitor for this position. I would like to say that I will be dedicating my time, effort, concern to serve this role. And finally, I hope to have your support as the Northern Regional Councillor and to be worthy of your trust. And I would like to conclude with one thing that I have mentioned during my talk, is that if there is one thing that I would be most glad to see in this election is to see all professional engineers spending time to know all the candidates and make an informed decision about their votes. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And Luke, your closing remarks.
As a recap, I'm seeking election for a third term on council to continue working on issues like licensing, under the governance review, continue to work on volunteer and their role, along with what is and the current task force that I'm on chapters and how they should continue in the future, and also to ensure that FAR Practa gets implemented in a timely fashion so that there's no intervention from the government. Like Ahmed said, this is something that I put a lot of weight on. Said, please take the time to listen to the webcast, make informed decisions, read the email blast so that you can make your own position and understand who would be more positioned to represent the ideas going forward. As I said before, I've reached out to many of the chapters. I've traveled a lot. I've been to Timmins, to Sudbury, to the Sioux, involved here in North Bay, had exchanges with Lake of the Woods. I missed out on Thunder Bay at Lakehead, but that's not because I didn't want to connect. It just life happens. But in all of that, I will continue to consult, be available, and do my best ability to represent what the Northern license holders have to say at council. Thank you. Best of luck to Ahmed. And thank you for putting this evening on.
Thank you very much. And this concludes tonight's discussion. I really would like to thank the candidates for their participation and also to all those watching both live and recorded. Thank you for your interest in the governance of the engineering profession. I hope you found the meeting to be informative and worthwhile. As a reminder, a recording of all these meetings will be on PEO's website for the duration of the election. Thank you again to everyone for participating in our discussion. And remember, your profession matters. So does your vote. Voting is quick and easy. You can vote on the internet or by phone. Voting opens on January 13th and voting closes at 4 p.m. on February 17th. And all the information you need is on our website, www.peo.on.ca. Thank you very much. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.